I'm Catalina, and I'm an assistant instructor with Just Get Wet.
Awesome. And what else do you do when you're not diving?
I love to rock climb, crack climb specifically. I play beach volleyball about 4 times a week on the bay. I really love to paddleboard on the bay too, and work a lot.
Okay, what do you do for work?
I'm a loan officer here for real estate.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Maybe tell me a little bit about your background. Like where did you grow up? Where are you from? And maybe what were like your experiences in like the water?
Yeah, so I actually grew up on a sailboat with my parents and my brother, so we have a very close family. My dad always wanted to live on a sailboat, and then he married my mom, and she was like, well, are we doing this or what? And they bought their first boat, and then so my parents actually built their first boat, and then they moved on it with my brother when he was really little. And then I came around, and they had to buy a bigger boat. So I grew up sailing to Catalina and kind of around the islands around Southern California, like growing up, and on summer vacations, long weekends, things like that. So my first memory actually is swimming in between my parents off Catalina, off the bow of our boat. And it was just, to have that growing up has been, I think, shaped me in ways that I can't even remember. It's really innate for me to feel home in the water.
So yeah, you've always been around the water then.
Yeah, definitely have. I grew up, about 10 minutes away from the beach after we moved off the boat. And my dad was a really big Spearo back in his day. So I was a little too little when he was doing that to really get in the water with him. But he took me rod and reel fishing since I was about 10 years old or so. We'd troll back and forth in between in the harbor in our little katydid sort of small boat, and that I was hooked on it, and he started taking me on big boats, and I caught my first yellowtail when I was 14, I think. So yeah, I've just been around and on the water for a lot of my life.
Okay. So at what point were you introduced to freediving?
So I moved down from Seattle a couple years ago, and for me, coming down from Seattle is like, oh, I finally have like warm water that I can swim in again. So my dad gave me his 2 old spear guns that he still had, and my motivation taking a freediving course was actually to sort of have the basics for spearfishing and do that safely. And I just took the course and I fell in love with freediving itself and falling in love with the line and the whole sport and feeling that I got from doing that. And so I just hit freediving pretty hard, and I've dabbled in spearfishing, but I've done a lot more freediving than spearfishing.
Okay. Just describe the course for you, like the first time you took it. Was it what you thought it was? What were your takeaways?
So I was pretty scared for my first course. And even after the first night, talking about like shallow water blackouts and just potential fatalities and things like that, I wasn't ever really exposed to the sport before and just that side of it. And so for me, it was really intimidating, and I was really nervous going into the next 2 days. But after I just put on my wetsuit for the first time and did like our intro session in the bay, and I also realized that I kind of had a little bit more comfort in the water than like other people that was in my course. And, I thought maybe I have like kind of a knack for this. And by the end of the weekend, like I remember posting on my Instagram, I was like, add it to the hobby list, like I'm hooked. And it's been almost a year now.
It's been a year since that first class?
I took it on like end of March, so it'll be a year and about a month.
And then in that time, what else have you done, like in addition to that class?
In freediving?
Yeah.
So my first year, which was last year, I went to Playa del Carmen 3 times and dove for probably a total of like 5 weeks or so down there. And that was just incredible. I mean, all the feelings that I had when diving in San Diego and during that intro course just were amplified times like 100 because of the experience that you get when you're diving down there. So it was just, even more so an incredible experience to dive and also learn from these instructors that were just so experienced and so seasoned and really took a really special approach to sort of diving deep into your mind and having this really sort of the mental side of freediving. I feel like that's what elevated my diving and why I was able to, become an assistant less than a year from doing my intro course.
Okay. So you said like all of these feelings and things were like amplified when you went down there. What were those feelings?
The feeling of like letting go, but the feeling like freediving is so, what's the word for it? Like two-sided almost, because it's a meditative, relaxing sort of feeling where you really let go. But at the same time, it requires you to push yourself through the uncomfortability that you face and the discomfort of a dive and wanting to breathe. And so being able to feel at peace with that discomfort and, eventually dive down to 40 meters, I mean, it's just living in those two worlds at the same time is something I've never experienced before.
Describe like your equalization journey. I feel like it's different for everybody. So like, did equalization come easy for you? Did you know what it was before you took a course, or?
So I did know what equalization was before I took a course, and I've been equalizing since I was like super small, playing in the water. Like when we'd go on airplanes and stuff like that, my parents would like have me equalize. So I always tell people like my ears are like super loose because of that. I never really had any EQ issues related to like physically clearing my ears. On my second to last trip down to Mexico, I did have like a sinus block right here, and it was the most frustrating thing ever because it was something that like I couldn't necessarily control or do. It was just I would go down 5 meters and have like screaming pain right here. And talking to Chris, he was like, it's good for you to have these experiences so you can help other people that go through it. So as frustrated as I was at the time, I think it totally made me be able to relate to people that were having those experiences. So I learned, and on that trip, I went feet first and, sort of got comfortable working through that. And other than that, I feel like, now I'm starting to dive deeper and deeper. Like I want to work on different techniques rather than just Frenzel. But I've been pretty blessed to have made it with just Frenzel this far, so.
Okay. So as of this point, like even down at depth, you still haven't like run into any EQ blocks or anything like that, or?
I don't think so. There was like one time at the end of my like 40 dive that I couldn't quite tell. It was either I didn't have to equalize because I had already equalized and I've never like been that deep before, and so I didn't know what that would feel like, or I didn't feel any pressure in my ears. So, I think I was able to do it, but it felt harder, I guess. That was the hardest it felt to ever equalize. So I think that's been my motivation to try other techniques and really get that dialed in, so it will take me deeper. Okay.
So what sort of things have you struggled with in diving? And it's okay if you haven't, or what?
So like FRCs and like mouthfill stuff, like getting that down as like a habit and just like muscle memory. I like don't have that down yet. And so a way that I need to practice that is like doing FRCs. And during my wave 2 course, or no, my wave 3 course actually, we were working on that, and the like afternoon, like Chris had given us a warning that he, like one time he was doing some FRCs and he felt like he had just like got kicked in the stomach by a horse. And I was like, that sounds weird. He was like, I'm just telling this so you all know what it is. Well, that actually happened to me that afternoon. I like felt like I had got kicked in the stomach and the diaphragm like by a horse. And it was the most uncomfortable feeling I've ever felt. And I called Chris and I was like, it happened. it happened to me. I was like curled into a little ball. So that really sucked. And yeah, so like really working on like deep equalization stuff is what I need to get better at.
Okay. How would you describe what FRC diving is for those who don't know?
It's a way to simulate deeper dives, simulate like what your body goes through at deeper dives without actually having to do it at depth. So it's a much like safer way because you're at the surfaces right there versus being actually like 140 to 200 feet below. So yeah, it's just a way to practice like what that feeling is, like chest compression and flexibility and that whole kind of thing.
Any advice for anybody who maybe is like interested in free diving? Like advice you'd give to newcomers that are like interested in taking a class?
I'd say just to encourage people to take the class for the most part. You know, if you're looking to get in the water at all in any capacity, like it's worth taking a class because the mistakes that you can make in the water can cost you your life or somebody else's life. So I really try to preach and like focus on, and I know Just Get Wet does a lot, is like focusing on the safety aspect of it. So even people that are looking to, you know, say, oh, I just want to like snorkel and, you know, become a better snorkeler, you know, be able to like dive a little deeper when I want to, like take a course, you know, because you're still in the water and you're still diving and you're still, I mean, just the like margin of error is just so minimal, and that's how I feel like I look at a lot of my hobbies is the margin of error. It's like, what's that going to cost you? It's like in freediving, the margin of error is very small. So, you know, I just encourage anybody who's looking to get in the water, like take a course. It can save your life or somebody else's.
Tell me a little bit about like spearfishing and like, I don't know, the two, like freediving and spearfishing. Some people say they're like completely opposite things. Some people say they're similar. Like what do you think?
So my spearfishing game is like way weak compared to my freediving game. And it's just a total mental thing for me. And I've heard a lot of people say it's the opposite, you know, like they have fish to see and they have, you know, things to think about. And so they don't really think about their breath hold. I'm like the opposite. I'm like, there's so much going on around me and like there's so many things I'm trying to think about as far as like, you know, like where should I grab onto, like how should I be positioned, you know, it's like, and then also studying like the topography like around me and just all these things that are going on that like for me I'm like, oh my gosh, like I think it just burns up a lot of energy for me. And so even though I know like my like longest dive on a line has been 2 minutes, like I basically do like a minute maybe of like drops for spearfishing, like maybe. So for me, I really need to work on like my mental game for spearfishing, and like something that you said has really helped me with that is, you know, going down and just like closing your eyes, just like chilling out and like diving into my mind. And so that I think is going to be huge for me like this coming season. I think that's going to help me a lot.
Yeah. No, and I see it too a lot with instructing when it's like, as an instructor, I'm doing a dive on the line. I'm doing like, let's say yesterday, like 20-meter dives. But there's a huge difference between having a line and just zoning out and then being an instructor and watching somebody on their dive.
Right.
And I'm like analyzing and critiquing and doing these things. And yeah, you don't realize how much oxygen your brain eats up just to think. You know?
Totally.
So, you got any cool stories about your dad and spearfishing and you and?
So I was able to get my dad out this past September. We did a charter to the Coronados, and that was the first time he's really picked up a spear gun in like 20 years or so. And it was the first time that he got to see me spearfish, and we were in the water together. And that was like, you know, he talks about it today, and he brought it up after the trip, and he got emotional about it. So he was like, you know, it's so cool to see you in the water. And it was so cool for me to see him too, because I mean, he's almost 70 now, but he turned into like this 20-year-old guy when he was in the water. I mean, you could tell that it was just such a huge part of who he is. And it just came back to him too. You know, it's like he was down there hanging out with me, you know, no problem. So that was a really special moment that we had. It was after a storm, so like our catches weren't anything impressive, barely manageable for the most part. It was pretty rough weather, but it was still really cool being in the water as a family. My mom hopped in there too, and she was just kind of, you know, taking photos and stuff like that. So it was a really cool experience.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. What was I gonna ask? Oh yeah, do you have any kinds of routines like that you kind of do maybe just like on a day-to-day basis, and then like with diving in any way? Or?
So the first sort of like meditative strategy that I used, I picked up from a pranayama instructor of a full visualization. Like when I'm at the buoy trying to relax and get ready for my dive, I would go through my morning routine, which was like from like alarm goes off, and like at my old apartment, we had me and my roommate, we had 2 cats and a dog combined. And so it would start from the alarm going off to one cat pops up, the dog starts waddling in the door, and then, you know, the second cat joins us. And so there was a whole morning routine there. And then I'd get up, walk down the stairs, go get my cup of coffee. And like, I would go through like detail by detail of like right foot, left foot, and just like super minute detail. And so that really helped me. And I would do that for up to like a stopping point. I'd have certain stopping points when I'd feel ready to go into my dive. Nowadays, I've just been able to enter that state of mind a little bit quicker. So I noticed like my last trip down to Mexico, I was like forcing myself to like take more time at the buoy just because I felt like, oh, I've been in this place before, like I'm ready to go. And now I've started singing a song in my head. So whether that's like at the buoy and I need to like just get in the zone to like get psyched about like this dive, or I've used it a lot more when like that CO2 buildup has really hit me and I'm like, not panicing's the wrong word, but like, you know, getting really uncomfortable with it. And so I start singing Hooked on a Feeling in my head. So it just starts with the ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, ooga chaka. And so then I'm just like, and there's like 2 different drops in the beginning of the song. And so I was just like, oh, going through like Hooked on a Feeling. And like, it just like gets me through the rest of like the dive or like whatever pool training I'm doing. And that's been great for me.
Awesome. So that's most, so it sounded like most of it's like visualization before a dive to prepare for a dive, but it's nothing necessarily visualizing a dive. It's kind of like taking yourself somewhere else to kind of just like slow down, and then sometimes on a dive you'll sink yourself into.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like and I think it's just maybe I'm lucky that I haven't really got to like a block yet, you know, because I know that does help people when they get to a block, you know, and visualize themselves like that not happening. But yeah, for me, it's been more like mental. It's like, what can I do to like get out of the present and more so like into this like meditative relaxation state.
Okay, cool. What sort of things do you like to do to train, or like how do you train, or what do you do to supplement diving?
Pretty much pool training. I mean, that's like outside of like line diving itself. I try to go to pool training once a week. If I have a trip coming up, like I'll try to do that for like the month before, like twice a week for the month before, and like that just like kicks my ass and gets me in diving shape. So that's super helpful. Other than that, I mean, I don't really like eat super well, to be honest. You know, like I try to run, you know, work on my aerobic activity, my cardio, but like, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I haven't really taken like a super serious like training regimen to heart for helping my diving.
Yeah, and I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like as far as like nutrition and stuff, is there anything specific you like to do, or?
So the biggest thing that like I've found is like actually no dairy does help like prevent congestion. I was on a trip like 2 Mexico trips ago. I like didn't eat a lot of dairy that trip just because that's just how my diet was. I wasn't like necessarily doing it on purpose. But I had heard a lot that dairy sort of promotes congestion. And so I got back home from my trip and like I like picked up like a ton of cheese just because I love eating cheese. And then I was congested for like 5 days after I got home. So yeah, if like I have something that I'm working towards or like planning for like a course or like a trip or something, like I probably do avoid dairy.
Okay. And what about like, I feel like it's very, depends on who you are, whether like you eat before you dive. Do you have any?
I get pretty hangry if I like don't eat. So I have like a little like breakfast biscuit in the morning. I'm one of those people that like do drink a cup of coffee before I dive. because nobody wants to be around me without me drinking coffee. So yeah, I'd say just something like super light, probably like an hour before I'm actually going to be diving, like a little breakfast biscuit or, you know, a little cup of coffee.
Okay, so something, but just not filling, just something
Yeah,
to kind of
no.
be on the stomach. You know, we always go to Mexico, to the cenotes, and diving down there. So, like, what's it like diving here in San Diego, and like, what's it like diving down there, and what's the experience?
So San Diego is, I mean, it fits on a clear day. I mean, like it's been gorgeous. I'm such a wimp when it comes to cold water, and by cold water I mean like winter here. So I only have a 5 mil, so I've pretty much avoided going a lot of this winter. Like I think I went twice in November, not at all in December or January. So yeah, it can be pretty chilly, but I have caught it on like a really good viz day, and like it's been gorgeous. Like if it could be like that all year round, like that would be amazing. But I think like the biggest thing for diving in San Diego that I like love is like getting in the kelp. I mean, I grew up listening to my dad tell all these like kelp stories, you know, of like hunting calicos in the kelp and, you know, seeing the yellowtail go by on the edge and stuff like that. So the kelp is kind of like a special place for me in the water. But yeah, I feel like it's just like a little bit colder than most spots. And then diving down in Playa del Carmen area, it's just, I get kind of cozy because like I still wear my 5 mil in the cenotes, but I'm like super warm, super comfortable. And then the viz there is just absolutely breathtaking. I mean, and each cenote has such like a different energy. They're such spiritual places that, I mean, I have kind of a little special relationship, I think, with each one of them just because I've been down there now like pretty frequently. There's like, you know, the Laguna that I have hit, like I remember like my first trip ever down there, like I hit a PB there, and it was just like the best dive that I've ever had it to that point. And like I would always channel that dive when I'd get ready for like other dives and just like want to like channel that energy. And then I hit my like 40-meter dive there, and so it was just like kind of full circle. So that was really cool. So yeah, the cenotes I feel like just have a very special energy, each and every one of them.
Yeah. If there is anywhere in the world that you could just go dive right now, where would it be?
You know, I'd really love to go to the Bahamas, where Vertical Blue was held. Was it Dean's Blue Hole or something like that? That would be awesome. Because I was just like had gotten into freediving, and then the competition happened, and Julian was a safety, and like I had trained with Julian, and so it was just like, and my parents were also actually in town during that competition, and so we'd like have our cup of coffee in the morning and like watch Vertical Blue, and so it was just, it's a really cool place that I feel like represents a lot of my freediving journey. So
okay,
yeah.
Cool. Is there any dives, and you might have already talked about it, like in your experience of diving that like stick out to you more than others, and you like just talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. There was one dive in San Diego where I was really having difficulty like equalizing my mask. Like I knew I had to do it, but I just couldn't find like the right way to do it. And Chris was out there like helping kind of run the buoys, and he came up to me and just like gave me like a tip on how he did it. And I had been kind of frustrated that day because like that was the one thing that was preventing me from like getting in the flow and getting like deeper. And he came over and kind of gave me a tip and like showed me how he did it. And then I did my next dive, and it was like my last dive of the session because I was already pretty much burnt out. And so I did one more dive and I got it, and then I got a PB, and I like, you know, came up from the top to top, and Chris was just like super stoked, and we got to high five, and I was just like, that was it. So that was like a breakthrough. I think I said that, I was like, I just had a breakthrough. And that was really cool to recognize. And it was really cool that Chris was there and was able to help me with that. So that was pretty special.
Awesome. Is there any discipline in diving that you like more than?
Definitely free immersion. I mean, just again, I think biggest point of happiness for free diving is that like super deep relaxation state. And so in free immersion, I feel like I can just really enter that to like the full extent that I have felt so far. And so that's why I think free immersion is my favorite.
what is your relation to the ocean, and like what does it mean to you?
So, like the ocean, just the best word I can describe it is home for me. After living in Seattle for 7 years, I mean, I'd still come down and visit all the time. And, you know, I'd drive to and from like Seattle and LA where I grew up. But there was just always a point that like I'd get to the California coast and be like, that's it. And it would just have this like different feeling for me versus just like seeing the sound up in Washington. You know, it's still water, you know, and it's still the same ocean, but it just, there's a feeling that I can't like really describe. And most of my experience has been like on the water, like on fishing boats. And so it's been really, really interesting to like have this like current chapter of my life be where I'm like experiencing like in the water, and kind of this like love that I've always had, just experiencing it and like cultivating this relationship with it in a new way, and experiencing what it's like to like be in it and a part of it versus kind of interacting with it from a boat.
Mm-hmm. You touched a little bit on it like earlier about like this mental, the mental aspect of diving. I mean, it's obviously a very physical thing, that you use your body and the things that it goes through, but it's also like a pretty wild mental journey.
Mm-hmm.
How do you describe that? Like what goes through your head on a dive, or like, yeah, why do people always talk about like it being a mental thing? Or...
Yeah, I mean, I think that when, I forget who said it, it might have even been you, but like when you're like, there's nothing you can hide when you're on the line. And there's been some times where I feel like, oh, I'm doing great and I'm in such a good place and there's like nothing I need to worry about, like I'm doing awesome. And then I'll be like on the buoy, like getting ready to dive, and then like something from like 2 weeks ago pops in my head and I'm like, you know, I need to sit with that for a second, because it's like, you know, why when I'm like putting myself in a place of like potential discomfort does like these things sort of pop up. So I think it like, and that's why I think I love the freediving community so much, is because we really have to reflect on what are our stopping points, like what do we need to push past in order to like be more at peace with ourselves. Because, you know, when you like start going underwater and you start getting to this point where you're like, I really need to breathe, and then your mind just like starts to kind of panic and spiral. It's so much easier to handle that when you're on land and you can breathe, right? I think that was the biggest thing that I remember like realizing after I started freediving. I was like, oh, like even running, I was like, this isn't so bad because I can breathe. It's not too bad. Because, you know, when you're underwater and all these things pop up, you're like, well, number one, like, can't breathe, like, keep your shit together for a little bit longer. So I think for, like, the mental side of it, it's just, yeah, I think it really just, like, forces you to see, like, what are these, like, deeper levels that, like, you're uncomfortable with, and, like, how you can sort of push through that to, like, be at peace and to feel in the present and like what you're happy with doing.
Cool.
During pool training, I like there's always a point in pool training where I'm like, why am I here? I was like, I hate this, why am I here, you know? And then I've just started telling myself in those moments, I'm like, to be a better diver. And like, you know, having to push, like you have to have those like phrases, you have to have those like tricks to like get yourself through it. And I think it's super applicable for like other things you're going on that's like in your life, just not freediving related. And it's just really good skills that I think we as freedivers can cultivate, and I really love the community because of that. There was a girls trip I was on down to Playa del Carmen, and we were doing this like shipwreck like dive basically, and we had a girl in our group who was just not feeling comfortable that day, and she was just taking photos, but I could see in her eyes that she really wanted to do it even though she was really scared. And you know, I would pass her on the line every time we would kind of be cycling through, and I was like, come on, like, you want to do it yet? And she was like, no. I'm like, okay. And I kind of just like gave her space, and then by the end I was like, I think you're gonna regret it if you don't do this. And she was like, you're right. And so she did it and she swam across and she came up with the biggest smile on her face ever. And she was like, "You're going to be an instructor one day because of that." And I think that was kind of like the first sort of like seed that was planted in my head to maybe that would be like a path for me one day. And I feel like it's been more so other people telling me I should be an instructor than me actually pursuing it myself. But yeah, that was kind of the moment that like I started to think, oh, like maybe this is something that I'd want to like help other people discover. And that was a really cool moment.
Cool, cool. So yeah, you've now like are kind of moving down that path to become an instructor. So it sounds like it was kind of brought on or maybe like realized by other people. But was that something, yeah, like what's that been like?
Yeah, it's been a journey, I'd say. Like I think that I'm really hard on myself. Just I'm really competitive like person with myself, and so I think that I just was progressing like as an individual, and that's also something about freediving that's been really cool. Is like it's really forced me to like relax into success versus being like I'm gonna hit this, because every time like I go in with any expectation of like hitting a depth, like that dive doesn't go well. So just to like really feel like focus on like the feeling of it versus like where you're trying to go. And so for me, like taking that journey, I think I've tried to not be competitive in like the freediving in freediving for myself, and just really try to keep it as like this is like a just for me thing. But I found myself just wanting to like share this with everybody. And I think for me, like when I do share it with somebody and I want to be like, oh, like, let me tell you about freediving, let me tell you about all these things and like why I think it's so good for people and why I think you'd really like it. And I think that just naturally I wanted to be more educated when I would bring up those conversations and introduce it to people and just be more knowledgeable about the sport. And so it just seems like the natural progression that like I want to have that credibility in that sense. And so I've been a little hesitant to like go through the actual instructor course because I don't think I'm good enough. But I think that like I'm getting there. So yeah, I do want to take that jump.
What does the future hold for you in kind of like the diving world, or what do you see? Do you have any like goals or aspirations? Or?
I'd really love to host like all female courses. I think there's a special sort of energy, a special sort of bond that is created like when women get together and support each other. So I'd really love to start offering like female courses in addition to just helping out with like the regular Wave 1 courses every weekend.
Cool. Awesome. Anything that you'd like to say that you haven't said or you want to tell the world?
I'm named after the island. That's a fun fact. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we touched on like my dad spearing, moving to San Diego, getting into it.
What does just get wet to you? I think it's for everyone. It's like something different, like what is?
Yeah. I think it's really just about community. I think that we have a really special group of people that are here that really just are super supportive, and it's all about like meeting people where they're at. And in all of my lines of work and like just what I've been involved with in my life, it's always been about meeting people where they're at. And so whether that's somebody who is just totally brand new to the water and, are just like, I'm living in San Diego, so why not get in the ocean? All the way up to people that, they have a competitive swimming background or they did lifeguard for years and years. It's really just helping people like discover this love and get them connected to the ocean. And not everybody's going to stick with it, but I think at least helping introduce people to it, that's been something that's been so life-changing and like healthy for me, like in my personal life. It's just something that I want to give to other people, or at least let them have the opportunity to experience what I've experienced in like such a positive way, and also meet some like rad people. I mean, like Jessica Wett's like my family now, and like I said, it was the best decision that I made of 2021 was like doing my intro course, because it's given me like a family and friends and just like such a healthy outlook on life, and just helped me just helped me in a lot of areas that are not only just in freediving.
Cool. What would you say to somebody who's scared to take a freediving class because they can't hold their breath and the ocean's scary?
You'll be surprised what you can do. That's like one of my favorite moments of the course, and just like helping people on Sundays is, they go down and do something and then they come up and they're like, oh my God, I just did that. It's like, yeah, I knew you could, and helping people just discover that confidence in the water. And even like this last weekend, like I talked somebody through a static and he got like 340, 350 on a static, and it was his wave 1. And, he was like, holy crap, like I tried to like hold my breath last night and it was like a minute 20 or something like that. So it was just, helping those people just like discover what they actually can do. You'd be surprised with what like your body can do and like what you can accomplish too.
Sweet. All right, I got nothing else.
It's a wrap.
All right. Build it.